In this video, we're going to go over two different ways to symmetrize your mesh. One's going to be a really quick way, but it doesn't work all the time. The other way, you're going to be manually symmetrizing it, so it'll work every time. So let's say that we started making model changes to our mesh. We thought symmetry was on, so again, our intent here would be we're giving him long, creepy fingers, and we think what's happening to one side is happening to the other. So again, zooming out, over here we have our intended model changes, but over here, oops, we forgot to turn symmetry on. You don't want to go in and remodel this side. You would like to automate this process to make it go a little bit quicker. So the fastest way in Modo to do this is to take advantage of the Symmetrize tool. So if I have the symmetry tool on, it's just up here, it can be on or off. If I actually hold the Alt key, where this says symmetry changes to the word option. So let's just click on this and see what happens. So now it gives me a little pop-out menu that I can just click and drag and have this out. So again, here's my main symmetry button. As I turn this on and off, you can see it's changing up here. You'll also notice up here it says symmetry in the X, so that would be in this case left to right. And down here it has our X, Y, and Z axis. So if I was to change these up here, it kind of tells you which one is active at one time. So again, we have symmetry on in the X. This is the one that we want to keep. And the tool we want to look at is this little guy right here, Symmetrize. Let's actually have symmetry off at first and click on this tool. This little pop-up comes up. It says Symmetrize Vertices, and then the side, that would be the left or the right side in a sense, it says Symmetrize to Positive. Click on this, or Symmetrize to Negative. Let's just leave it to default, the Symmetrize to Positive. Let's hit OK. And I get this new little pop-up that says, please activate symmetry. This command needs it. So with this tool, Modo kind of has your back and it says, hey, you can't use this tool unless symmetry's on. So let's hit OK, let's turn symmetry on, and now let's try to use this tool again. So Symmetrize, default setting, the Symmetrize to Positive. He has, his left hand has the long fingers, his right hand has the short fingers. Let's just leave this to default and see what happens, hit OK. Lo and behold, the creepy fingers on his left hand transferred over to his right hand. So let's hit the undo key a few times and make his right hand back to normal. So just to confirm what happens, let's hit this symmetry tool again, and let's do Symmetrize to Positive, change that to Symmetrize to Negative, hit OK, and now you can see his short fingers transferred over to his left side. In our case, we have a human character that's kind of standing on the ground plane. You should almost always have your characters. If I go to the front view, this is 0 on the Y. Have your character standing on that ground plane. And the other thing, if I go to the top view, he's facing forwards. So if I go to the front view, I get the front side of him. This is just one of those best practices workflows where, again, you want to have your person in the world center sitting on the ground plane facing forwards in the scene. Let's go back to that perspective. So realistically, that tool that we just used, the Symmetrize tool, hitting undo a few times, was just a really quick way to say, hey, I want to change my side so the left side is like the right side or the right side is like the left side. Hit undo real quick, but just know that it's not always going to work. So let's say that we have some discrepancy on one side from the other. So we'll turn symmetry off, lasso select, we'll delete some of these polygons. So again, he's missing part of his arm. So turn symmetry back on, we have it on in the X, Symmetrize. So Symmetrize to Positive, we want to keep this side, hit OK, and let's see what happens. Nothing. There was no vertices over here, because again, if I hover over this, it says Symmetrize Vertex Positions. It's looking for vertices over here that it can symmetrize. If it doesn't have any, it's not going to be able to symmetrize those. So in this case, we're going to need to manually symmetrize our object. Close this little window right here. I'm going to turn symmetry off. So now let's go over this process of manually symmetrizing a mesh. So the main tool that we're going to rely on for this is the mirror tool. So if I go to the duplicate tab, I have the mirror tool right here. So effectively what we're going to do is we want to grab the geometry that's missing from one side and mirror it over to the other side. Again, all default settings, hit apply, but we want to ensure that we get everything selected. If I try to figure out what polygons are over here and what polygons are not over here, it's going to be a little bit time consuming. So a faster way of actually doing this is to delete an entire side of our mesh and then mirror over that remaining side. So again, we're going to delete the left side or the character's right side of this mesh, and we're going to mirror over what's remaining. So let's just think of a faster way to select this. We don't want to go in and select these manually. If I go to the top view, I'm going to get a pretty good idea of where the symmetry line is, see the majority of the geometry, and I'll be able to lasso select this. So I'm going to middle mouse click, stay really close, keep my straight edge really close to that center line, and then I'm just going to go to the perspective and look. And I just want to make sure that I don't have a handful of polygons selected that I want to keep. Let's go ahead and keep all those. Zoom in on his face, we have the smallest polygons in here, so it'll be really easy to accidentally select when we don't mean to. So we'll do that, and we'll hit the delete key. Now, effectively, we have the character's left side is perfect, so we should be able to mirror it over to the right side. So let's use that mirror tool, left click, default settings, hit apply, hit escape to drop that tool. So now you can see all the geometry on the left is the same as the geometry on the right, it's just mirrored over. And the other thing that we want to do is we're going to want to actually zoom in on this and make sure that everything is happening as we expect it. There's a few things that can go wrong here, but usually you just want to double check your mesh. So let's go over some of those things that might cause a little bit of a problem. Let's delete his left side one more time. Look at those small polygons on the face. Yep, that's everything that has to do with the character's right side. So now, a potential problem could be some of these vertices. If I go to the front view, double click this edge, this can be thought of as the symmetry line for the character. So ideally this line should be perfectly straight up and down, and it also should be sitting right in the center of the world. So let's do a quick example of this not being the case. We're just going to take this vertice, move it over, take this one, move it over, take this one, we'll maybe move this one over this way. So we have these two vertices that are positive on the x, these ones that are in the negative territory of the x, and all the remaining ones are just sitting at 0 on the x. So let's try our mirror tool and see what happens. Mirror, default settings, hit apply. So these two vertices are both still here. He now has a hole in his chest, and these vertices in the center aren't really welded together. So let's hit undo a few times and go back to before we use the mirror tool, and now let's address getting this center line straight. So on the Edit tab, you have this little category of tools here that let you center what's selected. And like I said before, we want to make sure that all of the vertices on this center line are centered. So the long way of doing this would be to grab each one of these verts one at a time and hit center on the x-axis. Let's go ahead and undo that really quick. What you can't do though, it won't work, is if you grab all three of these and hit center. Because what that's going to do is it's technically seeing these as a collection of vertices, and it's going to center that collection of vertices. So if I moved it all the way over here, hit center on the x, it's just going to find the average spot of these and put that average in the center of the scene, and we really don't want that. We also don't want to come in here one at a time and center these. I mean, in this case, we only have 3 vertices, so it's not that big of a deal. But let's say that you had multiple vertices that were kind of wiggling back and forth, and you weren't sure all which ones needed to be centered. So what we can do is we'll look at this center line, and we want to get this center line perfectly straight. So we can actually take advantage of the scale tool to do this. So let's click the scale tool, and looking at its properties, the key one I want you to pay attention to is this negative scale. This is currently turned off. So if I was to left click on the red bar, so again, we only want to scale this in the x-axis. If we scale it this way, it's going to change the shape of our mesh. We just want to make this center line perfectly straight. So I'm going to grab this red bar, left click, and I'm going to drag it all the way in. My bar goes to the center right here, and I can technically keep dragging it to the left, and it actually stops at 0%. And again, that's because this negative scale is turned off. Now I have an edge that's perfectly straight up and down. So really quick, just to demo this, I'm going to turn negative scale on, and you'll see as I move my mouse to the center and then keep moving it, it does a negative scale, so it kind of inverts what's happening. We don't want that to happen. So again, negative scale turned off, scale all the way in until this scale on the X says 0%. Then we can hit the escape key, drop the tool. So the other thing that we need to be aware of, we can't just use the mirror tool right now, because if I zoom in on this, I need to be certain that all these vertices are in fact right in the center of the scene. So zooming out, what we can do to ensure that is at this point I know this is perfectly a straight line. I can actually select these. So again, I have edges selected. I just double clicked, grabbed this entire edge. I can hit center on the X, and that's going to make sure that these are centered. So again, let's do this one more time. And we're actually going to have a few vertices. More vertices are favoring the left side than the right side. Switch to the scale tool, negative scales turned off, scale this in. So right now we have a perfectly straight edge, but again, we favored the left side, so all of these edges move to the left. So again, from here, what I can do is just hit center on the X. I know that all these are perfectly straight. I know that they're perfectly centered. So now I can grab my remaining polygons, go to my duplicate tab, and use the mirror tool. So again, select the mirror tool, all default settings, hit apply, escape to drop that mirror tool, and then left click the background to deselect my polygons. And now at this point, I have a working symmetrical mesh. So let's demo this process again. Let's say that some tool was used and it really messed up his arm. I was zoomed in over here. I zoom out, didn't know that it happened, and oh no, I need to fix this. So again, really quick doing this process. I'm going to go to the top view, switch to polygon mode, lasso select, all the vertices that are on the left side of the x-axis, confirm that those are selected, delete those out. Then I want to ensure my center line is in the center of the scene. So I'm going to double click, switch to the scale tool, scale is turned off, scale on the X, can set that to 0, hit enter, escape to drop the scale tool. Now I want to center this center line. So edit, center on the X, escape key, that'll deselect that center line. Now I want to select all of these polygons. So again, I can either select all those, so all of them are selected, but again in Modo, if nothing is selected, everything is selected. So here I have polygons active. So down here it says all polygons are selected. I can jump to the duplicate tab, left click mirror, all default settings, hit apply. I'm done with the mirror tool. I hit escape, and then from here I know that this is symmetrized. So that was two different ways to symmetrize your model. Just know that this symmetrize option probably won't work if you have a bunch of geometry changes to one side of your mesh. It'll only work if the geometry on both sides are identical or close to identical. But the other method doesn't rely on the mesh having to have the same vertices on both sides in order for it to work.